So this is my first nighttime test with my auxiliary amber lights on, my Auxbeam lights. They have a little side look lens as well, so I'm expecting to get a little bit of ditch lighting off to the side with those. And then I've got my 42-inch light bar from Harbor Freight wired up on the roof. And here I am on this single lane paved road, and it's got a grove of olive trees along each side. They're spaced 25 feet apart, and I thought this would be a great place to test out the lighting because I could get some estimate relative beam reach with different combinations of lights. So here I am with normal low beam lights on, and it's pretty dark out there. Here I have high beams, and if you notice in the center of the road up there, a white reflection, there just happened to be a traffic cone up there at the end of the road with a reflector on it, so I thought that might help my little experiment here too. So this is just stock high beams on. Here's my lighting with my Auxbeam auxiliaries on, and I tell you, these are pretty nice floods. I've got a whole lot more visibility left and right here, going for quite a ways that I didn't have before. So I think this will probably work just fine instead of having dedicated ditch lights. These Auxbeams with the side lens on them as well that seem to work pretty good. So now I'm back to just low beams, and here comes the light bar. So there's my light bar. Really lights things up pretty good. So that traffic cone reflector is about 650 feet away, and I can see pretty good out to that distance. So here I am back to normal low beams. Now I'm going to try throwing everything on that I've got. So there is high beams, there is my amber, and there is with my light bar. So I'm pretty pleased with that. I think probably worked pretty good out in the boonies. So here I am, I'm 650 feet in front of the Bronco. I'm out where the reflective traffic cone is, and I don't know how well this will show up in the video at night, but if I was out here walking around at night, I would have no problem here making my way around, seeing just fine what's on the ground. And if I look further on in the direction the lights are pointing, again, I don't know if it's going to show up very well, but I could see probably another 500 feet, plenty to walk around and see what's around out there, way out in front of me there. If I turn around and look at the Bronco, well, there she is, and she's pretty lit up. I'll get a little closer, being careful not to blind myself. So I'm headed back to the Bronco. I'm about 100 feet in front. Give you a better idea what this thing looks like, but I'd say I'm pretty pleased. So that's what she looks like. I can't wait to get out on the trail and try this out in the middle of nowhere. Okay, so there's one more topic I want to cover to wrap this whole install up with the light bar, and that is the current measurement, because I am running this light bar using the standard Ford pre-wire on aux2, which is a 15 amp circuit. And I've gotten some comments like, well, that circuit's not beefy enough. Circuit doesn't have enough amperage available to adequately run that light. So the Harbor Freight specifications said that this was a 155 watt light. So just doing the math on that, if we take 155 divide by a nominal 12 volts, that says we should have 12.9 amps of current draw. A little bit more than 80% of the circuit value, but on a 15 amp circuit with wire that's gauged for 15 amps and a fuse that's set for 15 amps, this should work just fine even at 12 volts. So what I want to do is actually measure the current that it's actually drawing, and let me explain why I'm doing this, or how I'm doing this. Here is the typical handheld digital multimeter, and yes, you can measure current with these. You put it in series with the circuit, and these tend to have a 10 amp maximum rating. So I already know I'm probably going to be over that 10 amp, and so I'm not even going to bother trying to measure the current with my multimeter because I'm probably just going to blow the fuse in the multimeter. It's rated for 10 amps and I think it's got a 10 amp fuse on it. Here's a second digital multimeter handheld. It's also rated at 10 amps. That's pretty standard on these handheld multimeters. So not suitable for the amount of current that I anticipate measuring here. So there's another way we could measure current. We could use a shunt resistor, a low in value precision ohms resistor of adequate wattage, and put that in series with the 12 volt supply to the light and measure the voltage drop across that, do a little measurement on that. I decided to go another way, and I found on Amazon a relatively inexpensive panel meter, and it has a Hall effect device. And here's another advantage of using waterproof disconnects on these aux circuits, is I can just open up the circuit and run it through this sensor. And with this particular device, I can measure plus or minus 100 amps, anywhere from 0 to 300 volts. So this was relatively cheap. It was around 20 bucks on Amazon. I'll put the link below, but I'm going to use this as an actual panel meter, I think, later for a project at the back of the Bronco when I put in a power panel back there to run the refrigerator and such, and I'll put this panel meter back there and I'll know how much current am I drawing off of that circuit when the time comes. So this won't go to waste, but I thought I would try it out here this morning and measure the actual power draw going to the Harbor Freight 42-inch light bar. So here I have the engine off, the ignition is completely off. I'm just sitting here measuring 12.4 volts on my battery. I've got the 12 volts coming from my aux2 that's going up to the light through the Bronco pre-wire over there to the A-pillar. So here we go with a couple different measurements. So again, this is just engine off, nothing running, and it's measuring 12.4 volts off of my battery. So this is just with the engine running. I've got 15.2 volts. I haven't switched my light on yet, so 0 amps on that. And here I have the light bar switched on. I've got 10.4 amps draw. So what this tells me is this is going to be just fine running off of that standard aux2 15 amp circuit. And here again is the engine off and the aux2 circuit off. I'm going to throw the aux2 circuit on, turn those lights on, see what kind of current draw we get at slightly lower voltage here without the engine running. So now the light is on, and without the engine running, 13.9 amps. So not a lot of margin to that 15 amp circuit. So I think if I've got that light bar running, probably want to have the engine running and reduce that current draw. As long as I do that, I think this is going to be just fine. So my conclusion on this is if you buy one of the more expensive, presumably higher powered light bars, yeah, you're probably going to have to run a heavier gauge wire, get that up the A-pillar somehow to your light, and probably run that off of a relay if you want to use one of the aux switches. But for this light, which we just saw the lighting demo at night, perfectly adequate for me, and will work just fine with the Ford pre-wiring and the aux2 circuit running straight off the 15 amp circuit. So that's it. I hope this has been helpful. If you have found it helpful, please give me a like and a subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.